Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk to all of you today and sort of tell you the Chattanooga story. I am going to talk about the fourth floor, but I'm going to tell you kind of like the big picture as well about like how that plugs into everything with our library, because it's really just the, it's part of a bigger thing. And I want to talk to you a whole bunch about our city as well. Because all the stuff that I'm going to talk about are like particular service responses that we've designed in our city. So hopefully nobody's going to be walking out of here thinking, oh, well, we'll just do that in our place, and that's a good idea. It's not like that, right? Every place is unique. And so, so again, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much. So just a little intro to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and how all of this got started. Because in the last 2 years, you've all been kind of bombarded with the Chattanooga, Tennessee thing, right? And there was none of that before. Well, what happened is about three and a half years ago, a former mayor decided that he wanted to make the Chattanooga Public Library like part of his legacy, and he decided he was going to reinvent the place. And so he got together with the library board, and they figured out that they needed to do a report and really like look at this place. And so that report is really kind of incredible to read because it really, really disses the place hard. It is like, it really refers to it as one of the worst library systems in the country. So this led to the hiring of a new executive director, Corinne Hill, who I am not related to, but happen to share a last name with. We have to like be clear about that in the press like all the time. And then that led to her bringing me in as a deputy, and then like us bringing in this whole team of people to try to change this place around, to try to flip it. So that's where all this comes from. So everything I'm going to show you is stuff that's happened in 2 years in a place that was super broken. And the fact that it was super broken is a big part of why I was excited to go there. Because sometimes when something is just totally messed up, it makes it easier to change, right? So Chattanooga is this fascinating city. I rounded these figures. It's a little less than 170,000 people. I didn't round the number of libraries. We do have 4 libraries. And our budget is actually more like 5.8 million, but I decided to be optimistic and push it up just a little bit. The city itself is a fascinating place. Like in the 1970s, Chattanooga was known as one of the most polluted places in the country. The downtown was just like miserable. There was not a lot going on, but over the years, there's been significant investment in changing it, sort of like turning downtown and the rest of the city into an exciting place to live and be. That all started with building the aquarium, a huge project from the 80s that really like started to make it into something of a tourist destination. I mean, we're this small southern city, but people from all around Tennessee and from Georgia and Alabama think of Chattanooga as a place that they can go on the weekend because we have this like pretty phenomenal arts and culture infrastructure to the place. And there's a reason for that, that we're able to make those kinds of investments in the city. Coca-Cola, while it was bottled down in Atlanta, or while it was made down in Atlanta, it was first bottled up in Chattanooga. So there's some old money in the town to help sort of power these new changes that have been going on. The other thing that's exceptionally interesting about Chattanooga, Tennessee is our publicly owned gigabit fiber network. So as you're all hearing all of these things about the evil of Comcast and the disappearance of net neutrality, we're in a very different spot in Chattanooga because the Electric Power Board actually laid fiber long ago for one of the most innovative smart grids in the country, and now that is being repurposed as this like incredible source of like high-speed internet. And so for me, thinking about where to go to try to create this library of the future, to see that we could have that kind of connectivity in these public settings it was a real draw. And it really is part of what creates the culture of what Chattanooga is now. So we've got like our startup accelerators and all that, and I'll talk about how we partner with them and everything, but we've got, we're branded as the gig city. And it's changed like what's going on everywhere. There's been this sort of urban revival, for lack of a better term, in which on both sides, on the north side and the south side of the city, these neighborhoods have just started changing significantly, and they're sort of like slowly pushing their way into downtown, where the downtown library is. So this is the south side of town, and they have this awesome 24-hour festival in which people just go out and do crazy stuff for a day. Not unlike something you might find around here, for sure. And then the north side of town, we have a university. The University of Tennessee at Chattanooga is there. Because we're all library folks, you probably know Jason Griffey, who is a dude who is working there as well. So we've got like kind of a cool public and academic library crowd working together. I'm showing you the North Shore here. That's another kind of sweet spot where a lot of the students actually live, and they walk across this like really cool walking bridge to the other side of town. Again, we've got like these wonderful supportive local foundations that want to see the city change. And really, you know, before we started doing stuff with the library, they were finding all kinds of different ways to help support downtown and Chattanooga changing. And it's only since we've started doing things and making things happen at the library that they've kind of like noticed, and they help support what we're up to. So we're really proud of that. Another example of this sort of like cultural phenomenon that's happening in Chattanooga, we have our own municipal font, which doesn't suck. It's actually quite beautiful, and you find that you want to use it on all of your things. So it gives this consistent look and feel across all of the city. And the library, of course, we were sort of the first to embrace it. We were like, this is awesome. So all of this, I'm saying all of this, and you're thinking, oh man, he's going to show us this like super amazing library because we've been hearing about Chattanooga. But like, this is it, right? This is like our 1970s concrete bunker of a building sitting downtown. It's not that pretty. We've decided to embrace it. We've decided we kind of like love that period of architecture, and we're going to make it work, you know? But like, I just want to be clear that this is not like this like gleaming tower of librariness that everybody should be looking to architecturally. But what I'm going to do is I'm mostly going to talk to you about downtown. We have these 4 locations. I come out of large, urban branch library systems, and I totally recognize that the neighborhoods are where the action is at, right? But we came into this place and we needed to start change somewhere. So we're starting to flip our branches now. We've got something really cool going on down in South Chattanooga where we're turning it into this children's library because 80% of the material that was actually circulating was children's stuff anyways. But we had to start somewhere. So don't be hating on me as I just talk about like our downtown facility. We know we have a lot more to do with everything else. So the big question is, where does this library fit into its ecosystem, right? How can we be a part of this change that's going on in the city? And it's specific, right? And this is, again, getting at like what I was saying at first, how like don't look to anything that I say up here as solutions that you should necessarily implement at your library. It's all about figuring out how you fit into that puzzle and being really agile and flexible about how you fit into the puzzle so that you're useful to everybody. And that's tough, right? That's not as easy as just like having a big collection of books. Like it's a really complicated picture. So I'm going to go into a few like boring texty slides for a second here, which I generally don't like to do, but I want to explain how we got to where we are right now. The first thing that we knew, because we went through our strategic planning process and everything, we decided that we knew we couldn't do everything all at once. When you're faced with like something as broken as what we had, we had to kind of take things incrementally. And so again, as I show you a bunch of like the fun, like innovative stuff that's going on, recognize that we had an incredibly terrible collection of library books, and that it's going to take years to really build that up to be a vibrant collection. That's just not the story that I'm telling today. So we had to set priorities and target audiences, and we decided to go with 2 different things. The young entrepreneurs and like that sort of designer and developer crowd that's been flocking to Chattanooga, that's really driving economic development right now, as well as youth and families, partly because that's our current mayor's initiative, and partly because that's one of the things that libraries are kind of awesome at, right? We've always been pretty good at it, and we knew we just needed to repair that. So we designed a series of service responses. The maker space that I'm going to show you, and I've decided to split these 2 things out, but I really think of them as the same thing. When you say makerspace, everybody automatically associates it with 3D printers and like high-tech tools and whatnot. We do a lot with lower-tech tools, and so just for the sake of communication, I'm going to call the other service response the creative space, but they really mush together as one big thing. The civic laboratory, making the library into something that is a place that is useful for people to access local government, to feel like they're part of their local governing bodies and whatnot. And I've got some like pretty fun stuff to show you about that. The incubator and test bed is really important because we were the place that first had that public gig pipe. And so that means that we're a place that people can come and actually test the new applications and stuff that they're designing to work on that network. So we regularly have sort of startups and sort of social entrepreneurs coming through, and we give them space and we give them access to this kind of connectivity, and we give them an audience to test some of the stuff that they're up to. Finally, connected learning for youth, and I'll give you some slides of what's beginning to go on the second floor, but we've really drank the Mozilla Kool-Aid, and we're really interested in a lot of their ideas around that, around digital literacy and stuff that you all know and love. They've designed, if anybody's looked at Mozilla's web literacy standards, they're fantastic. It's a really great blueprint to use for those kinds of things. And finally, most importantly, we need to work differently. We knew that like all of the things that we're trying to pull off, we can't have that sort of standard hierarchical, old school library organization way of doing things. And I'm not going to go into great detail about how we've restructured, but suffice to say that we really think of ourselves more as a network structure than a hierarchical structure. It's the only way that we can be sort of limber and flexible enough to accomplish things as quickly as we have. So like while I'm here in New Jersey talking to all of you, if somebody needs to do something on 4th floor or the 2nd floor or wherever else, I don't want to get like a text message and be like, okay, yes, you can do that now. Just do it, right? And there's a lot of trust involved in working that way, and it means that a lot of people who might be like lower down what you would think of as the hierarchy are empowered to just do things. So I don't know, I'm really proud of the way that we've started working. So getting on to the 4th floor itself, that's really where all of the change started. So, while it's become like a pretty beautiful, interesting space, this is how it started out. It was 14,000 square feet of storage, of just like junk. You guys know how hard it is to throw stuff out sometimes, right? Because it's all inventoried and you have to go through like paperwork, and so people didn't do that for 30 years. They just took and they moved it upstairs because it was easy. And we don't suffer from a lack of space in this building. We got 4 floors and a basement, each of which is like, it's between 12 and 14,000 square feet. That is massive, right? So I was seeing this from afar and thinking about moving to Chattanooga, and knowing that I'd been trying to find like closets that I could do the kind of work I wanted to do in, like in San Jose and in Brooklyn. Seeing this, I was like, oh, I'm in. Let's do this thing. And we had all kinds of wonders of technology up there, like these lovely TVs, really important pieces of equipment, things you gotta have around the library. But of course, then like mixed in with that, we had, the tax records for the city of Chattanooga, just kind of hanging out up there, right? So it was like this total mess. And just a wonderful challenge. It was so much fun kind of going through the junk and seeing like what kind of weird stuff was there. I have a whole nother slide deck that's just like 100 slides of weirdness that is a ton of fun. But so this is what happens. You empty the place out, you mop up like 30 years of grime that was just there. And then you get to this point where like you have this like beautiful waxed floor and a big gleaming white box with nothing in it. And that's when I look at it and go, uh-oh, what am I going to do, right? Like I've got this beautiful, huge loft space and all of these ideas, and like now it's time to figure out how to animate this space And it's really kind of daunting to look at it. And frankly, it still is daunting to look at it. I would say that we may have more space than we need for what we do. And we fill it up for some major events sometimes, but on a daily basis, you'll see some pictures of people working in there, and it can be kind of weird. So this is a really, really important point, that we knew there was absolutely no way that we could do it on our own. I think that David Weinberger's article about the library as platform that was in LJ a year or two ago was maybe one of the most important articles in the last decade, because it's about this notion that we don't have all of the expertise in the library, that we can't rain down our knowledge upon the people who come into the place, but we need to actually recognize that knowledge is distributed across our community, and we can be a platform for them to come in and make the library theirs and do things there, make things happen there. It's not a place just for consumption, but it's a place where people can come and produce and share and do things together. So with that notion, that was how we were able to start moving forward. And so the very first partner, and this is when my job was super fun, because I was just running around town having coffees or beers with like the most interesting people I could find in town to talk to them about what the library was going to be for them. In fact, before we ever got started clearing the space out, I invited the local Linux users group in and just told these guys, hey, you know, this library, you're paying your taxes, you're paying for this space, you own it. Like, what do you want to do with it? Just trying to get people to understand that it's theirs. It's not ours, it's theirs. So the AIGA was one of our first partners. Do you guys know what the AIGA is? No? So they're like the Professional Association for Design. It's like the ALA of the design world. And they had existed in Chattanooga for a little while, but they needed to kind of spice things up and revamp their organization as well. And so we ended up talking. He said, well, what the heck? Why don't you guys do this on the 4th floor? You're sort of part of this target audience we have. You have connections to people and speakers and programming that, like, we certainly don't at this point, so let's work together. So the very first thing that happened up there, they brought in this designer from, I think came all the way from Memphis, actually, to do a public class on HTML and CSS and a little bit of JavaScript. And, you know, there were 30 or 40 people there, it wasn't huge, but every single person left that going, why doesn't the library do this all of the time? This is great. And so we thought, all right, well, that sounds like we better try to do this all of the time because you actually want it. And so we make a note and we figure out how we're going to try to follow up on that in the future. So I'm going to start running you through a series of events. And what we did is we kind of learned from each event. I was part of the DPLA planning process, and so we were able to have the DPLA's first App Fest there, in which we had this big hackathon. 100 people from around the country, both academic libraries and public libraries, all came together to poke at the DPLA API before it all went live. And so we started learning more about the space, and this is what it looked like when we set up for that, not really knowing what we're doing, but we figured out, oh hey, it turns out this is an awesome projection space, right? Like, these walls are huge and people can do great presentations here. And so we started this pattern of these things where we notice something about the space and then we make a small investment, right? And so we decided, okay, clearly we need to have a killer projector here if we're going to actually do this. And so then we spent some money on it. So we don't just dump crazy money into this space. It's really important to understand. We do things, we have things, we see a pattern, and then we invest. The other thing that we started doing is really watching how people use the space. So this is what it looks like when you have a couple of dudes hanging out working on building an app. They find a little corner and they start to work on something. And so we realized we have to design these little spots where they can hang out. We also have to make them feel empowered to move everything around and turn it into the kind of spot that they want. So I'm not going to make those guys went and found a cute lamp and decided they needed to set it up in order to work. We actually did sort of set that up ourselves. But this is an ongoing pattern up there as well. It's just let people pull things together and do it the way they need to do it. One of our most important partners, and this is one that I would encourage you all to reach out to in your communities, is if you have a startup accelerator in town, those are people who are really, really fantastic to work with, or at least they have been for us. In a lot of ways, we were thinking of the library itself as a startup, something that needed to iterate and improve really fast and become more agile. So working with them has been great. One of our sort of key events that kicked off change up there was something called Will This Float? Will This Float is a small business pitch competition in which people with their new ideas get up. It's sort of like the Ignite talks that'll happen here, in which somebody throws their idea out there. It's judged on Twitter by all of the different votes, and then the winners get mentorship and prizes and whatnot. So we had this like massive space, and we were able to partner with them to throw this event. And you end up, there were 450 people at this event. And our wireless is like kicking butt because it's totally working the whole time that everybody's tweeting, which is wonderful because often that doesn't happen in those situations, right? And what happened is you get all these people in this room, and they're saying things like, "Wow, we had no idea that the library was here. Like we didn't even know about this. This is awesome. We didn't know the library was awesome." All right. And so that brings me to like what I think is a really important point. As we try to figure out all of these new services and these new things that we want to do in libraries, it's not about taking the audiences that you've always had that love what you do and like trying to twist them into like getting into something new. This is about designing new services for other folks who might have forgotten that the library was there. And there are a lot of them. There are really a whole lot of people. So we had fish on the walls and stuff. There were, it was kind of cool. There were goldfish bowls at all of the tables around there. And then we ended up with one of those situations at the end where everyone's going, "Oh, who's going to take these goldfish home?" Right? So, but we worked it out. But again, this notion of iterative improvement is so key. Because we know we can't just dump money into the space. And I have a really fun example of that happened after Will This Float, the first Will This Float, and this is a year ago that I'm showing you. There was a little bit of money in the budget, in their budget for the event. You remember in that first slide I showed you that there were those stacked up bookshelf pieces? So there was a guy, as a retired Disney Imagineer, who we were able to throw some of the event budget to, and he took and cut them up and built these partitions on ball-bearing wheels with a corrugated plastic piece in all of them, which allowed us to have these things so that you can reconfigure the room in all of these different ways. And we just hacked it together out of stuff that was sitting around. It was all of our junk. And it gives us all of these different new kinds of configurations. Super fun to do. And again, we couldn't have done it ourselves. So I'm going to push up over to another event here, which is going to set me on back into that sort of civic laboratory track. So we're continuing with our timeline of improvement on the 4th floor, but this is going to go on a little bit of a tangent now. There was maybe 6 months into getting there was a new Maryland city candidate election. And so the library and the community kind of tried to like jump right into that and figure out how we were going to be a part of just getting people to vote and getting people engaged in government. And so there was a group called Creative Citizenship that formed. It was folks from the startup incubators, folks from AIGA, folks from a bunch of different orgs around town that wanted to do this like long 3-day event about just getting people involved in what was happening in the city. So we had this amazing talk. This is Dan Ryan and Josh Higgins. Dan Ryan actually lives in Chattanooga. They were the lead developer and the lead designer on the Obama 2012 campaign, which was just a record-breaking campaign for how much money they raised. So they gave this user experience talk up on the 4th floor, and it was just this like blowout success. It was one of the coolest talks I've been to. And here's Corinne, our fearless leader, right up in the middle of all of those candidates in a forum. And I know I can think of times in the past where I've been working in branch libraries and stuff, and like a city council person comes into the library and everybody's like, there's a city council person in the library. Like, we all have to be good right now, right? And so we've taken this, like, the total opposite approach of that. We're like, just invite everybody in. This is a neutral public space, right, where everybody can come together. And how cool is it to have these people in the library before they're ever elected, seeing the value of what the library is and can be for them and for the community. So that when they come back, they're like, oh yeah, it's a mess, but we know you guys are working on it, right? So this really started a pattern for us of like trying to do more and more with the rest of the city. And a new mayor came in who ran on this platform of transparency and open government. And we jumped at the opportunity to get involved in sort of the open data movement that's been going on all across the country. He brought in 3 fellows from Code for America, and we ended up, well, this is a picture of a hackathon that happened last year. Actually, the National Day of Civic Hacking was last Saturday, but this is a year before that. And we brought people in to start working on building like different kinds of interesting civic apps. So when I say that, I'm talking about those things you've heard where it's like people can sign up online to take care of snow shoveling on a particular corner, or like being able to report a pothole directly through an app on your phone, things like that. By opening up government data that is typically just like sitting around in PDF format somewhere, you're actually, you make it so that developers can build new cool tools like that. And so we ended up getting into this really, really cool grant opportunity with Open Chattanooga. And basically we came together, it's this, here's the wordiest slide ever, but it's this 3-headed monster of the city trying to reform their practices of actually collecting and gathering data. The library becoming an open data portal, so we now actually treat data as just another collection. Same kind of classic collection development policies where we have the portal at the library so that people who develop apps are actually kind of pinging our collection. They're actually hitting it and using it. And then the brigade is the citizens group. These are the activists who work around like pushing to open more and more data. And so things like this happen, right? Like this is like, again, a year old. This is the chat crimes map in which burglary data was made available. And then you can take and you can overlay that over a Google map and you can actually see what areas are getting robbed. And you can create interesting narratives around that. So it's been a fascinating project, and we're actually just getting started. We're working with Socrata now. Chattanooga happened last Saturday, and we've launched the data portal. There's not a ton of stuff there yet, but we're working on it. What's really cool about the library doing this, rather than the rest of the city, is that we, as collectors, can go out and we're interested in getting stuff from nonprofits and citizen science and other sources that if it was just living in the city, they might not be motivated to do that. And this is our team hanging around at Chattanooga last Saturday. Super proud to have that many library folks actually there and participating. Somebody pointed out to me how like not diverse that particular slide is, but I just want you to know that that their boss is a woman, and that there are actually like a couple of really key people who just aren't in this picture. So don't be hating on it too much. We've got a great diverse team. So getting back to the 4th floor and the progression of all of that, we knew that we wanted to open it up to the public, turn it into this makerspace, turn it into a place where people could come and access tools. And it wasn't just going to be this event-driven thing, but a real spot that's open every day. And now it is open at 2 o'clock every day till close. We were open in the mornings, but nobody comes in the mornings. I guess nobody's creative juices are flowing in the morning or something like that. The event that really kicked it off was partnering with the Startup Accelerator on the Maker Day, in which we basically introduced the idea of 3D printing to the public at large in Chattanooga. You know, the thing about 3D printing is that it is one of these like wondrous technologies that like it doesn't matter if you're a little kid or if you're like a 95-year-old, you're kind of blown away the first time you ever see it happen. And so it was a really effective and kind of sexy way to kick off a lot of different stuff that we do. So we had, oh man, we had like 13 different people come in with their own like hobbyist printers and just show off what they were up to. We had folks from a couple of different universities with additive manufacturing tracks there, actually showing people that like this is more than a hobby, but you could make a career out of this. We had folks from local industry that were actually using these technologies in what they do on a daily basis. And we had a speaker series going throughout the day. It was this blowout. We ended up with like 1,200 people coming through the library on this sunny Saturday that never would have come. And it was just this massive success. And the thing that was super cool about it is that Meg Backus put this sticker onto our printer, and this was the most tweeted photograph of the day. And people got super excited that this was going to go down at the library. And so that was the beginning of it. Basically, I took our whole sort of digital services team and moved them up to the 4th floor. They co-work in public with everyone else who comes in there. We're really not into this idea of back of house in Chattanooga. You shouldn't be able to go and like hide out and do your work somewhere. We want to work in public with the public. At the beginning, this worked out just fine because the idea was like, hey, you know, somebody wanders onto the 4th floor and you're working, stop doing what you're doing, go over and say hi to them, show them what we have and whatnot. That didn't scale well at all. Because like they are staff who are really legitimately trying to, you know, fix our totally busted catalog and things like that. And so we ended up having to kind of grow from there. We now have these 20-hour-a-week positions that we call smart people, whose job descriptions are like half cribbed from the Apple Genius Bar, and then you add a bunch of library language, and they end up being like these amazing people. We've got some like just absolutely genius folks who do this, and they just kind of hang out, and when somebody walks in, they introduce them to whatever is going on. I love this particular picture because Meg created this sign that just absolutely rules. When you come onto the 4th floor, you feel a little bit like, oh, did I go to the wrong place? Like, is this a loading dock? Like, what is this, right? If you didn't know you were going there, it's like, it's a little bit jarring. And so this is a very, very direct message that, that indeed it's okay. And what you're seeing in the background there is another kind of fun space hack with the corrugated plastic that was on those dividers. If you actually do a rear projection with just a cheapo like office projector, it gives it this crazy effect like you have this like living wall. It's totally awesome. Another thing that really helped us move forward up there was after we started to have some success on the 4th floor, the Benwood Foundation that I showed you in that previous slide started to recognize it, and we were able to get an innovation fund from them. So you know how hard it can be to purchase like some like really basic things at the library, right? Like you need to order a cord off of Amazon, and it's like you have to go through like, you jump over like 10 hurdles in order to order a cord. What's really cool about having this innovation fund is it lets us work our way around some of those things. And so, because if you're really going to try to do new things, you need to be able to make mistakes, right? You need to buy the wrong cord by accident and not have it be, a massive problem. So because of this innovation fund, we were able to partner up with Spark Fun Electronics, who are out in Boulder, Colorado. They manufacture Arduinos and the microcontrollers and a lot of open source hardware stuff. In partnership with Jason Griffey and Bo Baker and folks from the local university, we were able to go out there and be hackers in residence for almost a week. This was so much fun. We just kind of geeked out for a week and had a blast while we were there. But more important than what we did while we were there, we learned how to teach a lot of things. And coming back from there, we started the Arduino Thursdays. And every Thursday, people just kind of come and they hang out. We do some intro level classes, teach people how to blink an LED light or whatever. And then people sort of start to self-organize around their own projects, and all these like fun and wacky things happen. And then people come and kind of demo the different stuff that they do. So that trip was enormously helpful. And I see that as like the kind of professional development that we really need to find ways to support. Because it was so great. Some of the other things that are going on up there, we've got a Rostock 3D printer that somebody started putting together. It's a $1,000 kit, and you can actually build your own printer, and it's just like a super amazing thing. Again, that came out of that innovation fund. I'll run you through some of the equipment that's there, and I should add, if we do run out of time, if you guys have any questions about any of this stuff, you see my Twitter handle on the bottom of the slides. I can't promise that I'm going to get back to you right away, but within 24 hours or something, I will answer any questions about it. So this is our laser cutter, our vinyl cutter, both pretty well used. This is some really crazy stuff because we're partnered up with the Startup Accelerator, and one of their tracks this summer is an additive manufacturing track. They ran out of space to put some of the crazy equipment that they needed for the teams to use. They ran out of space, so they decided to work with us and just put it on the 4th floor. So these are some super high-end printers that are up there. And this is another one of those testaments to how we have this iterative improvement cycle. In the center, you see that there's a slop sink there. You know, we've been trying to figure out how to get a sink on the 4th floor forever. And by working with these guys, we were able to actually do it in a snap, and we didn't have to pay for it, which is totally wonderful. Moving on from there, this is our loom. You can check out time on the loom using your library card. And again, this gets into this, we're leaving the high-tech zone, right? We have people who are hanging out up there working with yarn. This is not all about flashy objects like the printers and all of that. This is really just about making stuff. In fact, our most recent super successful event was the Zine Fest. And this was another example of the library's platform thing just working so well. A design professor, Aggie Toppins at the university, is just like a zine nut. And she is a super, she's just got so much energy. And she wanted to put together the Chattanooga Zine Fest. And like everything else that we do on the 4th floor, it has to have both a production and a consumption side. So while people were there kind of showing off the work that they've done, the different things that they've created, on the other side of the room, we had all of the materials ready so that people could start putting together their own zines and adding them to our now growing zine collection at the library, which is just, it's just a blast. Moving on to the next point in my bulleted list of the different service responses, we really have sort of become this interesting public access point to the entrepreneurship track in Chattanooga. I think with a lot of this startup stuff and the entrepreneurship work, it can be kind of elitist at times, right? It's not necessarily something that feels accessible to everybody in the community. So having the library there is a big partner in that. And so when the CoLab does something like their big Gig Tank demo day in the summertime, that you can come and part of that is going on in the library, really is just super healthy for our community. And everybody's kind of latched onto it. It's been really successful for us. So now as Mozilla and the NSF have decided to invest in our town through the Mozilla Gigabit Community Fund, the library is really driving a lot of this. In fact, the three projects that have actually been funded in the first round all touch the library in one way or another. And I'll show you 2 of them as we move on. But I mean, look at the crowd that we have got up on the 4th floor. We get, a rep comes through from Google and he talks on the 4th floor. It's become this sort of plug and play, 5 minutes. Oh man, I need to accelerate you guys. So I'm going to move on quicker from here. Some of the things that we've done with entrepreneurs. I love the work that we've done in this group, Engage 3D. These guys were one of the teams for Gig Tank the previous summer, and they were working on putting together this hacked Connect camera system. They wanted to have a 3D video conferencing system that took advantage of the incredible bandwidth in Chattanooga. And so this is this performance art piece that they designed. All right, so this is a little wacky, and I'll try to explain it the best I can. You've got a dancer on a stage in one location. There are cameras that are tracking their movements. So you see how there's that sort of skeleton? That's the camera tracking the movements of the dancer. There's a scrim, like a 50% transparency in front of them, and there are projectors shining videos on that. And because of the way the camera's tracking them, it looks like the dancers are moving videos around on that scrim. So this is all going on in the library, in like the public space. Over on the other side of town, at the Gig Tank demo day that I was referencing, there's another dancer doing the exact same thing. And because of the amazing connectivity and what these guys put together, they were able to have the dancers like throw videos back and forth between the two different spaces. So we were live streaming the other performance at the same time. It was just bananas. And, I mean, it really was. It was totally crazy to see this thing happen. And what was awesome is that the fourth floor was the development space for these people. For a month before that ever went down, their whole team was up there working alongside my team and alongside the public, putting this thing together. So, interestingly, the 3D video conferencing never really went anywhere. But what did go somewhere was DevDev. This is the same group of people who were just totally inspired by what was going on in the library and realized that there's an opportunity to create a coding camp for kids and that we have an audience to actually do that. And so from there, they actually picked up and they worked with us to do a 4-week program in which kids were learning, the basics, HTML and CSS and JavaScript. I think they did Python. And a little bit of robotics as well. 50 teenagers, and it was just like this crazy success. And it was really cool because we have our awesome youth service librarians. And this is Justin Henke, who a lot of you guys know, right? He's phenomenal. He and Megan are just like blowing it up on the second floor. And of course, when DevDev's going on, those two aren't programmers, right? But they are people who work with kids and who can really hang out with kids. And so by having them act as this kind of bridge in the audience as part of DevDev, it was just amazingly successful. And Justin continues to do all this super fun and wacky stuff. The Awesome Bear is something that you can follow on Twitter. It runs on a Raspberry Pi, and somebody can come up and basically type in what they want the bear to tweet. And it's just it's not going to change the world, right? But it's this super fun interaction to have on the youth services floor. And super fun interactions are something that we definitely support. So DevDev has moved on. I feel like we kind of incubated this sort of educational movement. Last year there was one code camp in town. This summer there's 8 or something. I mean, all of a sudden it's just blown up as a thing to do. So we're moving on. We're continuing to work with them, and we're incubating another summer camp right after that. That's more on the design side of things. That uses sort of the IDEO framework, which some of you might be familiar with. And then finally, in my final few minutes, because I could talk to you all for hours. It's really nice to be able to talk to you. 2 of the projects that we're working on with the Mozilla Gigabit Community Fund, one of them is called Hyper Audio, that is a online video editor. It's this incredible tool for remixing content. So basically, you have a video that's associated with a transcript on the one side of the screen, and as the video is playing, you can see it's moving word to word. Well, you can actually take, and just like you're using Microsoft Word or something, you can highlight a chunk of text, drag it over to the other side of the screen, and by moving the text, you edited the video, right? And so having that kind of access to video through text, is absolutely amazing. And so immediately you think of the fun sort of supercuts and how you can go and remix the president's speeches and all of that stuff. But there's also these wonderful educational opportunities that come along with that. Because once you start actually working with content in this way, and you're learning through doing, and it's going to be really exciting. We're also working with some other folks, Adagio, to build out a music laboratory on the second floor. 0 minutes left. So this is my last. I have 2 slides, so I'm just going to push my luck here. Adagio actually gives you access to all of the different tracks in the song. You know how Beck released an album a couple of years ago that you got access to the source for the album, so you could actually take the individual tracks and remix it and create your own Beck songs. Well, he's doing the same kind of thing with this, and we're going to have the laboratory to do it, so that across town, if the symphony's playing, you could just bring up like, you know, the horns and mix it with the flute that you're playing in the laboratory. So it's super awesome. It's super fun. We have a great time. You guys are awesome and fun. Thank you so much for having me.